It started with the scream, not a shriek of pain or terror, but something else, something feral. It echoed through the house like a wild animal trapped inside. I was 11 years old, sitting at the kitchen table doing my math homework when Pam let it loose. She had locked herself in the upstairs bathroom. My brother pounded on the door, his voice shaking with panic, pleading with her to open it. I sat frozen, staring at my pencil as her scream morphed into uncontrollable sobbing. My mother rushed up the stairs, her voice tight with dread. I remember the sound of the lock finally clicking, the bathroom door creaking open, and then silence. I crept halfway up the stairs to peek. Pam stood there barefoot, pale as chalk. Her mascara streaked down her cheeks like veins. She looked down at me and smiled. I didn't know it then, but that would be the first time she deliberately shattered the reality around us. My brother Jack was 19 when he met her. I idolized him. He was everything I wanted to grow up to be: kind, funny, charismatic. When Pam entered our lives, she seemed like the perfect match. She was older than him by 2 years, and the first time she came over, she brought me a gift: a puzzle of a haunted house. I liked her immediately. She smelled like jasmine and wore long flowing dresses that brushed the floor as she walked. But it didn't take long for the cracks to show. Pam started doing things that didn't make sense. At first, it was subtle. She'd insert herself into conversations she wasn't a part of, always needing to be the center of attention. If Jack talked about college or his plans for the future, she'd go quiet, then start crying hours later, saying he didn't love her anymore. Then came the lies. She told my mom she had a rare heart condition, said she wasn't expected to live past 30. When my mom asked for more details, Pam gave a name of a condition that didn't exist. Later, she claimed someone had assaulted her at a gas station. But Jack looked into it. There were no reports filed, no evidence of anything. She lied about small things too: where she'd been, who she was with, what she did that day. Then she started calling me at night. It began with her whispering my name through the receiver. Just that. "Annie," she'd say. "Annie, are you awake?" Sometimes she wouldn't say anything at all. I'd just hear breathing, soft and raspy. I stopped answering after the fourth time. I told Jack. He brushed it off, said she was just struggling. But there was something wrong, very wrong. One night I woke up to find her standing at the foot of my bed. I screamed so loud I almost fainted. My mom came running. Pam just stood there, hands clasped, smiling that same eerie smile. "I heard her crying," she said. "I was checking on her." I wasn't crying. That was when Mom put her foot down. She told Jack to stop bringing Pam over. Jack pushed back, but he didn't fight her too hard. I think a part of him was starting to see it too, that Pam wasn't just troubled. She was something else, something darker. After they broke up, things didn't calm down. They got worse. Pam started following me. She showed up at my school, waiting by the fence at recess. She sent me emails with long, rambling confessions about how she missed our family, about how she and I were connected, more than sisters. She even sent a photo of her and Jack taken from behind a tree, as if to prove some point about fate. Then came the night she showed up at our house with a baseball bat. She didn't swing it. She just banged it against the door over and over, her face twisted in rage, shrieking Jack's name like she was possessed. When my dad opened the door with a crowbar in hand, she ran into the woods barefoot, leaving the bat behind. Jack refused to call the cops. He said she needed help, not punishment. I wish we had called. I wish we'd done something. Because that was only the beginning. The beginning of a nightmare that would haunt us for years to come. Pam was no longer just Jack's ex-girlfriend. She had become our shadow. And shadows, I would learn, don't go away just because you close your eyes. For a while, it felt like it might be over. After the baseball bat incident, Pam vanished. Her family, clearly aware something was wrong, had moved her out of state for what we later learned was drug treatment and psychiatric evaluation. My parents tried to reassure me, saying she wouldn't be back. Jack didn't say much. He looked hollow for a long time, like something inside him had collapsed. I was finally able to sleep again. But it didn't last. It started subtly, too subtly for anyone to believe me at first. A silver car parked across the street for hours, never running, never moving. Just sitting there. I noticed it while brushing my teeth one morning, and then again after school, and again that weekend while playing outside. Every time I tried to get a closer look, the car drove off. Then came the phone calls. Again. But this time it was worse. The first few were silent, just breathing. Then I heard humming. Something melodic, but wrong. Like a lullaby slowed down and played in reverse. I started unplugging the landline in my room at night. One evening someone knocked on my window at 1:34 a.m. Just two soft taps, followed by silence. I screamed. My dad rushed outside with a flashlight, but there was nothing. No one. No footprints. Jack tried to downplay it. He said I was just shaken up, that I'd been through a lot. Maybe I had. But then he started noticing things too. One night he came home pale and shaken. He said he'd seen the silver car again, tailing him as he drove home from work. At first he thought he was imagining it, but when he turned off the main road and pulled into a gas station, the car kept going, then reversed back into the lot slowly, headlights off. He confronted the driver, but when he approached the car, it sped off. He only caught a glimpse: blonde hair, pale skin. It was Pam. He was sure of it. It escalated from there. She started showing up in public places. Once at a diner where Jack and I were grabbing lunch, we caught her watching us from a parked car across the street. She didn't blink, didn't flinch, just stared. Another time she attended my school play, sitting in the back row of the gymnasium. No one had invited her. She didn't approach me, just watched, then disappeared before the final curtain call. My parents finally called the police. They were sympathetic, but not helpful. There was no restraining order, no physical harm, just a lot of he said, she said. Jack didn't want to press charges, said it would only make things worse, but they got worse anyway. The worst night was in mid-December. Jack and I were driving home from the movies. Snow was starting to fall, thick, wet flakes that made the road slick. As we turned onto the highway leading to our neighborhood, headlights flared behind us. High beams, blinding. The car swerved up behind us, barely inches from Jack's bumper. It was her. We couldn't see her face, but we knew. Jack floored it, trying to lose her. She followed, weaving between lanes, flashing her lights, honking, laying on the horn in one long, continuous scream of sound. I was shaking, holding onto the door handle so hard my fingers went numb. Jack took a sharp right into a gas station, hoping to lose her again. She followed. That's when Jack called the police. By the time they arrived, she was gone. The officer was kind but frustrated. "We'll file a report, but unless she physically harms someone, our hands are tied." That same night, Jack's dog, Ike, went missing. Ike was a gentle, goofy golden retriever who loved everyone. We searched for hours, calling his name, posting on Facebook, knocking on neighbors' doors. Nothing. 2 days later, his collar was left in our mailbox, wrapped in plastic, soaked in something that smelled like bleach. We knew it was Pam. Then, miraculously, Ike was found by a woman 3 towns over. He was skinny, covered in fleas, and terrified of loud noises. But alive. She had taken him to the vet, who scanned his microchip and called us. That's when things took a sharp turn. The address Ike had been picked up from was Pam's new apartment. Police got a warrant. What they found was worse than we could have imagined. There were hundreds of photos, some printed, some developed in a darkroom, of Jack, of me, of our family. Photos taken through windows at night, some of me brushing my hair in my bedroom, some of my parents sleeping, one of Jack, shirtless, brushing his teeth. Dozens of our dog, too, bound, locked in a closet, malnourished. They found the dog's food bowl covered in dust, and journals, dozens of them, written in looping, frantic handwriting filled with disturbing fantasies. Not just about Jack, but about me. Her new little sister, she called me. The girl who would understand. One page was just my name written over and over in red pen. On another, a detailed plan. If he won't love me, I'll burn it all. Starting with her. She was arrested that night. Jack broke down. I'd never seen him cry like that. My parents were stunned. We thought it was over before. We thought it couldn't get worse. But now we were scheduled to testify in court. And none of us could shake the feeling that even locked away, Pam wasn't done with us. She had embedded herself into our lives like a parasite, feeding off our fear, our peace, our sleep. And we all knew the trial would bring her back to the surface. Some shadows don't need to be seen to be felt. Some nightmares don't end when you wake up. When the trial began, we were warned that it would be emotionally draining, possibly re-traumatizing. But nothing could have prepared us for the sheer surrealism of standing in the same room as Pam again. It had been nearly 9 months since her arrest. During that time, we were told she'd undergone several psychological evaluations and was being held in a secure mental health facility pending the trial. The prosecution had built a strong case: unlawful stalking, breaking and entering, animal cruelty, harassment. Her journals alone were deeply incriminating, not to mention the photographs and the testimony from the woman who found Ike. Still, the idea that she could manipulate her way out of accountability was terrifying. When Pam entered the courtroom that first day, everything felt colder. She was thinner, paler, and her once perfect posture was gone. She walked slowly, arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to disappear. But her eyes, those pale blue, too wide eyes, still held that same eerie sharpness, as if she were absorbing every detail, every person, every whisper in the room. She wore a soft pink sweater, probably meant to make her look fragile and harmless. But to us, she looked like a mask stretched over something deeply wrong. Jack sat beside me, jaw clenched. My mother gripped a tissue so tightly it shredded. My father sat stone still, his face unreadable. Pam's defense leaned hard on mental illness, bipolar disorder, trauma, addiction. They portrayed her as a deeply unstable woman who had spiraled out of control and lost her grip on reality. They blamed her behavior on a breakdown, arguing that she needed treatment, not prison. But the prosecution countered with cold, indisputable facts: the journals, the premeditated stalking, the break-ins, the nighttime photos taken through my bedroom window, the collar in the mailbox, the detailed plan to burn it all. I was called to testify on the third day. I'd never been inside a courtroom before. The sterile lighting, the quiet hum of fluorescent bulbs overhead, the way everyone turned to look at me when I walked up to the stand. It all felt too big, too exposed. My hands trembled as I was sworn in. I looked at the jury, then at Pam. She was smiling. Not wide, just a soft, knowing curve of her lips, like we were sharing an inside joke no one else could hear. My heart dropped into my stomach. I couldn't look at her again. I told them everything. About the late-night phone calls, the whispering, the breathing, the humming. About the knocks on my window, the silver car. Her staring at me during the school play. About Ike, the collar in the mailbox, and the state he was in when we got him back. I held it together until they showed one of the photos from her collection, a zoomed-in shot of me sitting at my desk, brushing my hair, unaware I was being watched. That's when my voice broke. She was inside my world, I said, trying to hold back tears. Not just watching from afar, she knew everything: my school schedule, my bedroom layout, my friends, our dog's name. She made me feel like I wasn't safe anywhere. Jack testified next. He was calm, controlled, but I could see the cracks beneath his surface. He spoke about their relationship, the lies, the manipulation, the emotional blackmail. When he described how she threatened to kill herself if he ever left her, several jury members shifted uncomfortably. But it was his description of finding the collar in the mailbox that landed hardest. It was like she was telling us, "I'm still here. I can get to you whenever I want." And for a while, I believed her. The trial lasted 6 days. The jury deliberated for only 4 hours before returning a verdict: guilty on all counts. There was no cheering, no joy, just a quiet, collective exhale. Pam was sentenced to a psychiatric facility with a minimum commitment of 10 years, with no chance of early release until she'd undergone extensive therapy and been declared mentally stable. But even that didn't bring peace. We went home that night and tried to return to normal. But what does normal look like after you've been hunted by someone you once invited into your life? For weeks, I couldn't sleep with the lights off. I checked all the locks twice, then 3 times. Every time a car drove past our house, I peeked through the blinds, heart racing. I had dreams, violent, surreal dreams, of her returning, of waking up to find her standing over my bed, whispering my name. Jack moved out a few months after the trial. He said he needed a fresh start, somewhere far away. He found a job out west and tried to leave it all behind. We still talk, but something between us has changed. like we're both carrying a shard of the same shattered mirror, trying not to cut ourselves. I tried therapy. It helped a little. I talked about the fear, the invasion, the loss of innocence. I talked about the fact that I'll never fully trust someone new without first wondering what they're hiding. Pam may have been locked away, but her shadow lingered. Sometimes I still find myself scanning crowds for her face. I tell myself it's impossible, that she's gone, safely tucked away in a padded room. But fear isn't rational. It doesn't care about facts. All it takes is a knock at the window at night, and I'm back there, 11 years old, staring into the dark, wondering if she's on the other side of the glass. Watching, waiting. The night terrors didn't stop after the trial. If anything, they intensified. At first, I thought it was just stress unraveling slowly. Court had been like holding my breath for weeks. I figured once it was over, once Pam was sentenced, things would settle. But trauma doesn't evaporate. It sinks in, takes root. And mine was growing, warping everything. 3 weeks after the verdict, I was brushing my teeth before bed when I noticed the bathroom window was unlocked. I froze. I always locked it. My mum was militant about it. Windows are the weakest points, she used to say, long before any of this started. I stared at the latch, trying to figure out if I had forgotten, but the memory wouldn't come. Had someone been inside? Had someone watched me? I slammed it shut and didn't sleep a minute that night. Small things like that kept happening. Lights flickering, doors creaking open that I swore I closed. My phone ringing with no one on the other end. Just static. I told myself it was paranoia. I tried to be logical. But logic doesn't help when you wake up and your bedroom window is wide open. I started checking under the bed again. Like a child. My therapist called it hypervigilance, a leftover from trauma. That made sense, until the incident with the mail. It was a Tuesday. I was home from school early, helping my mom prepare dinner when she asked me to grab the mail. I walked out to the box like always, expecting nothing more than bills and flyers. But mixed in with the stack was a small unmarked envelope. No address. No stamp. Just our last name written on the front. Inside was a single photo. Me, sitting in our backyard the previous week, reading a book in the sun. From the angle, it had been taken from the woods behind our house. There were no words, no threat. Just proof. Someone was watching again. My hands shook as I showed it to my mom, her face drained of color. She immediately called the police and they came out and did a sweep, but there was nothing. No footprints, no fingerprints, no evidence. The officer tried to comfort us, saying it might have been an old photo. But I knew it wasn't. I recognized the book I'd been reading. It was new, and I remembered that day. I remembered feeling like I was being watched. That was the night my dad installed motion-activated cameras around the property. 4 of them. He also bought new locks, reinforced the doors. It felt like we were turning our home into a fortress. I didn't feel safer, just more aware of how much danger we'd lived with before. A week later, the cameras caught movement. A tall figure, hard to make out in the grainy night vision, standing just beyond the tree line behind our backyard fence. They didn't approach, didn't try to get in. Just stood there, watching, for nearly 20 minutes. Then they vanished. The police couldn't confirm who it was. They checked on Pam, confirmed she was still locked away. But that didn't make it any better. Because if it wasn't Pam, then who was it? And then something even stranger happened. Jack came back. He showed up unannounced on a Saturday morning, bags in hand, eyes bloodshot. I was shocked. He hadn't even told Mom or Dad he was coming. He said he'd been having trouble sleeping, that something was off in the city where he'd moved. But when I pressed, he clammed up. That night, after everyone went to bed, I found him in the kitchen, sitting in the dark, holding a bottle of beer and staring out the back window. "She's not gone," he whispered, almost to himself. I sat across from him. "You mean Pam?" He nodded slowly. "I don't know how, but I feel her. Like a splinter in my brain. I see her in crowds, in reflections. I know she's locked away, but it's like part of her didn't go." I didn't laugh. I didn't scoff, because I felt it too. A few days later, Jack told us why he really came back. He'd been receiving letters, anonymous, typed, untraceable. Each one had a phrase Pam used to say to him when they dated. "When the moon is thin, I'll slip through the cracks." Every time he got one, it came with a photo of him from that week. Candid shots, crossing the street, grabbing coffee, sleeping on the couch. He brought the letters with him. Mom opened one and immediately turned away, hand over her mouth. It was a photo of Jack standing in front of his apartment complex, with a note taped to the back. "Your sister looks so much older now." We called the police. Again. They opened a file, said they'd look into it. But without a return address, fingerprints, or any evidence Pam had breached the facility, there wasn't much they could do. "Before we move on, please donate me in the form of subscribe. She has followers," Jack said quietly. "People who believe her. I think, I think she made friends inside, told them stories. Maybe someone's helping her." That thought chilled me. Pam had always been a master manipulator. What if, even locked away, she was spreading her influence, feeding her obsession, getting others to do what she couldn't? The final straw came one rainy evening when our family sat down for dinner. My mom brought out a covered dish, lasagna. She lifted the lid, and there, lying right on top of the noodles, was a crumpled black and white photo. It was me again, 11 years old, sleeping, taken from inside my bedroom. I screamed. The dish hit the floor and shattered. My dad called 911, and this time the response was different. Authorities launched an investigation into the psychiatric facility. They wanted to know if anyone on staff had been in contact with us, if any letters were smuggled out, if Pam had access to outside communication. But we never got a clear answer. And something inside me whispered we never would. Because whatever connection Pam had to us, it wasn't broken. It wasn't over. It had only evolved. We didn't move right away. Looking back, I don't know why we didn't. Maybe it was stubbornness, maybe denial, or maybe we believed the police when they said things would settle down, that they had eyes on the facility, that Pam had no way to reach the outside world, and that the letters were likely an elaborate prank. But even with cameras, reinforced doors, and constant vigilance, we were not safe. Because the real horror had always been psychological, and that sort of poison spreads no matter how many locks you turn. 2 months after the lasagna photo incident, my dad finally cracked. He came into the living room with a stack of real estate brochures and dropped them on the coffee table. "We're moving," he said. "Somewhere new. Fresh start." We all agreed. That's how we ended up in the house on Caraway Hill. It was about an hour away from our old neighborhood, a remote 2-story Victorian tucked behind a wall of pines. The kind of place that looked haunted even in daylight. But it had space, distance, and, according to the realtor, a great security system. My mom hated it instantly, but Dad was desperate. Jack had already left again, saying he needed to get his life back, though he promised to visit often. So we moved. At first, I welcomed the isolation. The house was surrounded by nothing but trees and the occasional deer. No late-night knocks, no strange letters, no new photos. I started sleeping with my bedroom door open again. My mum even took up gardening, trying to distract herself with planting rows of lavender and sage. But the peace didn't last. The first warning came from the dog. We'd adopted a mutt from a shelter, a golden retriever mix named Gus. He was mellow, affectionate, and not easily rattled. One night around 2 a.m., I woke to hear Gus growling at the window. Not barking, growling, low and constant, the way dogs do when they sense something they can't understand. I crept to the window and pulled back the curtain. There was nothing, just dark trees swaying in the wind. But Gus didn't stop. His hackles were raised, his body tense. I tried to soothe him, but he didn't calm down until almost dawn. The next morning, I found muddy footprints on the back deck. Human. Barefoot. As if someone had been standing just outside the kitchen door. I showed my parents. My dad called the police again. They took a report, but said it was probably some drifter or a prank. They left without searching the woods. My mum wanted to leave immediately. My dad insisted we give it time. We gave it time. A week later, we received a letter. No stamp, no return address. Just placed on our porch in the dead of night. Inside was a single page, typed, "New house. Pretty, but I preferred the blue curtains in your old bedroom. The light hit your face better there." more angelic. P. My hands went numb. I dropped the letter like it was burning my skin. My mum collapsed into the nearest chair, crying silently. My dad called 911, screaming at the dispatcher. This time, they actually took it seriously. A pair of officers came and did a full sweep of the property. They even brought in a canine unit, but just like before, nothing. It felt like we were cursed. That night I had a dream. Or maybe it was something else. I was standing in the hallway upstairs, looking down toward the staircase. Everything was bathed in a dull, flickering red light, like the glow of a neon sign outside a window. But we didn't have a neon sign. There was nothing nearby but trees. In the dream, I felt a presence behind me. I turned slowly. It was Pam. She was wearing the same hoodie I remembered from my childhood, the faded purple one with the tiny embroidered butterfly on the collar. Her hair hung in clumps around her face. Her eyes weren't human. They were deep black pits, reflecting nothing, and she was smiling. She leaned close, whispering into my ear, "You'll never be too old for me to love." I woke up screaming. My mom came running. My dad, too. Gus was barking like mad. I could barely explain it through the tears, the terror. My chest hurt, my throat burned. And then I noticed something. The door to my room, the heavy door that always creaked, was wide open. I never sleep with the door open anymore. But worse than that? The window was unlatched. The next day, we discovered something else. Buried at the edge of our property, behind the line of trees, my dad found a small wooden box. Inside were trinkets, scraps of cloth, Polaroids, strands of hair, even a Barbie doll I hadn't seen since childhood. All things from our old house, things that had been missing for years. We called the police again, but now their tone had changed. They began to ask us if we were making it up, if we were seeking attention. After all, there was still no evidence Pam had escaped. No proof she had help, no fingerprints, no sightings. Just fear. Just madness. The last straw came on a quiet Thursday morning. We were eating breakfast. The kitchen radio played softly. My mum was humming, then the signal cut to static. And through the static, a voice came through, clear, cold, familiar. "You still make that face when you cry. You did it yesterday, looking out your window." The radio went dead. We smashed it, called the police again. They dismissed it as a coincidence, said old radios picked up weird signals all the time, that it wasn't possible for a patient locked inside a psychiatric facility to hijack a broadcast. But I knew. Pam wasn't locked in, not anymore. She was out here, or at least part of her was. We started to believe that Pam had become more than a person, more than a threat. She was a disease, a sickness that infected the world around her. The police didn't see it. The therapists didn't see it. But we did. We were living in it. The signs began small, subtle. We got a new landline number when we moved to the Caraway Hill house. It wasn't listed anywhere. But still, the phone rang one night. No caller ID, no area code, just 000000000. My mum answered. At first there was silence, then came the faint sound of breathing, slow, methodical, followed by a voice. "Do you still keep the blue curtains in a box in your attic?" She dropped the phone. My dad reported it, but the officer barely looked up from his notepad. "These kinds of harassment cases are hard to trace," he muttered. "Probably a coincidence. Just block the number." But it wasn't just the phone calls, it was the people, the ones who started showing up. It began with a woman in the grocery store. My mum caught her staring from across the cereal aisle. Pale skin, jet black hair, an old scar across her chin. When my mum smiled politely, the woman whispered something under her breath. Later, she realized what it was. "Pam loves your roses." The next week, a man came to the house under the guise of selling solar panels. He asked strange questions. "Do you sleep on the left side of the bed or the right? Do you ever get that feeling you're being watched, right before your eyes close?" My dad slammed the door in his face, but later we found a card shoved under the doorframe. Not a business card, just one sentence scrawled in red ink. "I know the way she tastes you." That same night, Gus, the dog, vanished. No broken windows, no busted doors. His collar was left in the middle of the hallway, perfectly coiled like it had been placed there. We searched for hours, days. Then, on the third night, we heard scratching at the back door. It was Gus. But something was wrong. His tail was between his legs. His body was trembling. His ears were flattened, eyes wild with fear. He didn't bark. He didn't run to us. He just stood there, staring. There were carvings along his sides, tiny, precise symbols etched into his fur with something sharp but careful. My mum sobbed when she saw it. My dad called animal control, who couldn't make sense of it. They said it wasn't animal bites or abuse. It was intentional, but not deep enough to count as mutilation. They gave us pamphlets about pet safety. No one listened when I said the symbols looked ritualistic. And that's when I remembered the journals the police found in Pam's apartment all those years ago. They'd shown my brother a few pages, just a glimpse. I remembered one entry clearly. One day they will all see what I see. I'm just the beginning, the seed, the thing that opens the others. At the time, it sounded like the ramblings of a delusional woman. Now I wasn't so sure, especially after the church incident. We were trying everything to cleanse the house. My mum reached out to a small local church, a non-denominational place called Mercy Chapel. They were the only ones who believed us, or at least pretended to. The pastor, a soft-spoken man named Elias, came out one afternoon to bless the home. He walked from room to room, murmuring prayers, sprinkling holy water. Everything was fine until he entered my room. He stopped cold, his face turned pale, he gripped the cross around his neck and whispered, "She's been here." My dad asked him to elaborate. Elias didn't respond. He just turned and left, mumbling something about needing to consult scripture. We never saw him again. He stopped responding to calls. The church locked its doors permanently 2 days later. Their website vanished. No trace. And that's when I realized something terrible. Pam had followers. Maybe she met them online. Maybe she found them in the mental facility and whispered just the right words into the right ears. Or maybe it wasn't her at all anymore. Maybe she was just the vessel for something worse. Because people were acting as her eyes, her ears, her hands. She wasn't outside the house anymore. She was inside it. And then we found the crawl space. It was under the living room, accessible only by pulling up a loose floorboard beneath the rug. We never would have found it if Gus hadn't started scratching at it night after night, whining and howling as though something called to him. My dad pried up the boards one morning and shined a flashlight into the hole. There was space, about 4 feet deep, a dirt floor, old insulation, and in the far corner, half buried in loose soil, was a Polaroid. It was a photo of me sleeping in my bed, dated just 3 nights before. My face was illuminated by the moonlight, my mouth slightly open, completely unaware. And in the corner of the photo, barely visible in the shadow, was the shape of a hand reaching toward me. We filled the crawl space with concrete the next day. But no matter what we blocked, sealed, buried, or burned, Pam always found her way back. Even when we stopped saying her name out loud, even when we removed every mirror in the house, even when my dad gave up trying to protect us and started drinking instead, even when Jack came back and said, "I saw her again." He showed up on a Tuesday. The screen door creaked open, and I heard my mom gasp before running into the hallway. I followed her, heart pounding, and there he was. Jack, my brother. We hadn't seen him in almost 8 months. He looked hollow, sunken cheeks, dark circles, a beard grown wild. His jacket hung off his frame like it belonged to someone else. But his eyes, those were still Jack's. Haunted, yes, but familiar. He didn't say a word at first, just hugged Mom, then Dad. Then he looked at me. I should have been excited. I should have felt relief. Instead, my stomach twisted. Jack's eyes weren't just haunted, they were scared. We sat in the living room, and he slowly began to speak. "I'm sorry I left," he said. "I thought, if I got away, maybe she'd stop. Maybe she'd forget about me." "She?" I asked, though we all knew the answer. "Pam," he whispered, "or whatever's left of her." We were silent. Even Dad, who usually scoffed at Jack's dramatics, just sat there nursing a drink. "She found me," Jack continued. "No matter where I went, Nevada, Oregon, even Alaska, she found me. At first it was little things, Notes under my pillow, scratches on my car hood. Then, people started showing up. He rubbed his face, voice trembling. One guy followed me for days. He wore a hoodie that said, "Ask her," on the back. Never spoke, just watched. Another time, a woman left a dead bird outside my motel room with a tag that said, "She's hungry again." I swallowed hard. Then, Jack said, voice lowering to a rasp, she came to me in a dream. Mom reached for his hand, but he flinched. I was in this endless hallway. No doors, just lights flickering above. I could hear her voice, soft at first, then louder. She kept repeating the same thing. "I never left you. You left me. You owe me your breath." His fingers trembled as he reached into his backpack and pulled something out, a piece of paper, folded neatly. I opened it. It was a photo. Of me. Taken 2 nights ago. Through my bedroom window. I gasped. "How did you get this?" "It was under my pillow," he said. "In a town 800 miles from here." The room went cold. Jack leaned forward. "She's not just obsessed. She's not even human anymore. Something's inside her. Or maybe she's inside something worse. I don't know. But it wants me. And it wants you." Dad finally spoke, voice hoarse. "We thought maybe she had died. Or been locked away. The police said." "The police don't understand," Jack cut in. "This isn't just mental illness. It's spiritual. It's parasitic. She spreads, through people, through dreams, through fear." He paused, eyes wide. "She feeds on fear." We sat in silence, the only sound being the creak of the old house settling. But it wasn't just the house. There were footsteps upstairs. Jack looked at me. "Who's up there?" Mum's lips parted. "No one. We're all here." We froze. Dad stood up, grabbed the fireplace poker and climbed the stairs. He checked every room, every closet, the attic door. Nothing. But when he returned, he looked paler than before. "In your room," he said to me, "someone wrote on the mirror." I ran up behind him. Scrawled in a faint, oily residue, barely visible, was a single word. "Mine." We slept in the same room that night. All 4 of us, huddled together like children. Jack sat in the chair by the door, refusing to sleep. I remember asking him quietly, "Do you think she ever really loved you?" He didn't answer for a while. Then finally, "No. But she wanted to be inside love. She wanted to wear it like a mask. That's what she does. She learns your desires, your weaknesses, and then she becomes the idea of what you crave most." I shivered. She became my perfect girlfriend. Then when I tried to leave, she became my punishment. Later that night, we heard whispers in the walls. My name. Jack's name. Then soft knocking from beneath the floorboards. Dad poured salt across every threshold. Mom left every light on. But still, we felt her. Watching. Waiting. Jack eventually told us one last thing before we tried to sleep. "There's a house," he said. "In Calaveras County, an old cabin near a lake. She took me there once, years ago. Said it was her anchor, her true home." "Why are you bringing it up?" I asked, already dreading the answer. "Because I think we need to go there. I think that's where she is, where she keeps her followers, the photos, the journals, the things that don't make sense." Dad scoffed. "You want us to walk into her trap?" "I want us to end this," Jack said, eyes fierce. "I'm tired of running, aren't you?" We left before sunrise. There was no planning, no preparation beyond the essentials. A few bags, a baseball bat, a hunting knife. Jack said firearms wouldn't help. "This isn't something you can shoot," he kept repeating. "It's not her body we're dealing with anymore." The drive to Calaveras County was long and winding, taking us into the shadow of the Sierra Nevada foothills. Trees closed in overhead. Fog slithered between pine trunks like ghosts too lazy to rise. I counted every passing road sign, every flickering light, every sign that we still belonged to a world governed by reason. By the time we pulled onto the gravel trail Jack claimed led to the cabin, all of that was gone. The forest here felt old. Too old, like it remembered things that shouldn't be remembered. We parked and walked the rest of the way. There were no birds, no insects, not even the rustle of leaves in the breeze. Just silence. And then, up ahead, the cabin. It squatted between trees like it had grown from the earth itself. The wood was blackened, warped, swollen from age or rot or worse. Ivy strangled the roof. The front door hung askew, broken at the hinges. "This is it," Jack said. "She brought me here once when we were still together. Said it was where her real self lived. I thought she meant that figuratively." We approached cautiously. My dad had the bat, Jack the knife. I had a flashlight. Mum gripped my shoulder like letting go would mean losing me forever. Inside, the cabin was worse, much worse. The air was thick, like soup gone sour. Dust clung to every surface, but underneath it, symbols. Carved into the walls, the floors, even the ceiling. Not in English, not in anything I recognized. They pulsed. That's not metaphor. The wood pulsed, as if the entire building breathed. We moved deeper, through a narrow hallway into what might have once been a living room. It was hard to tell now. The walls were covered in photographs. Hundreds of them. Overlapping, curling at the edges. Some were Polaroids. Others were grainy digital prints. All of them were of us. Me, Jack, Mom, Dad. Some from years ago, others from last week. One showed me brushing my teeth. Another had Dad mowing the lawn in the old house. One caught Mom crying in the hallway. Jack standing in a motel parking lot, head tilted toward the sky. And in every photo, somewhere, sometimes in a reflection, other times hidden in shadow, was Pam. Watching, smiling, waiting. I backed away, stomach twisting. That's when we heard the chanting, low, rhythmic, feminine. We followed the sound through a door at the back of the room. It opened into a staircase descending underground. The air grew colder with each step. The chanting got louder. When we reached the bottom, we found them. 4 people sat cross-legged in a circle, hooded, faces hidden. Each one swayed to the same rhythm, repeating a phrase in a language I didn't recognize. A pentagram of ash was drawn around them. In the center of the circle, floating just above the dirt floor, was a mirror. Not an ordinary mirror. The frame was rusted iron. The glass rippled like water. As we stared, it began to speak. Not with words, with images. It showed us Pam, as she had been, beautiful, smiling, her hand in Jack's. Then her face twisted, teeth too sharp, eyes bleeding black. Her smile stretched past human limits. She peeled back her own skin to reveal something else beneath, a writhing mass of teeth and shadow and serpents. Mom screamed. Dad stumbled backward. Jack stared. "She's trying to come through," he said. "This mirror, it's the gateway." "What do we do?" I asked, heart hammering. Jack stepped forward. "We break it." Before we could stop him, one of the hooded figures leapt to their feet. A woman, eyes wide, lips torn from smiling too hard, blood on her teeth. "She is coming. She is eternal. She is already here." She lunged. Jack met her halfway with the knife. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't heroic. It was messy, brutal, desperate. She shrieked and collapsed. The others didn't move, still chanting, louder now, louder. Jack raised the knife and plunged it into the mirror. Nothing. The blade stopped an inch from the surface, hovering, suspended mid-air. "No," he whispered, "she won't let me." Suddenly the mirror flickered. And then I was in it. Not my reflection, me. Sleeping. Just like the Polaroid. Then another image. Jack, hanging by his wrists in a dark room. Then Mom, burying something in the woods, face streaked with tears. Then Dad, sitting in a car, gun in his lap. Then back to me. Only this time, my reflection looked up and smiled. "Get out," Jack whispered. "Get out now." But the chanting grew deafening. The cabin shook, dust fell from the beams. The air thickened with the stench of rot and sulfur. One of the chanters stood, blood pouring from her eyes. "She welcomes you," she rasped. I grabbed Jack. "We have to go." "I can't leave her here," he said, staring at the mirror. "You can't save her. She's not Pam anymore." He hesitated, then nodded. We ran, back up the stairs, through the warped living room, past the wall of photos now on fire. Somehow, the flames didn't consume, they just burned endlessly, the paper curling but never blackening. We reached the trees. Only then did the screaming start. From the cabin, from the trees, from everywhere. Not human screams. Something else. We didn't stop running until we reached the car. That night, Jack said nothing. None of us did. We just sat in the living room of our house, staring at the blank TV screen. And when I finally went to bed, I saw a new note on my pillow. Typed, clean, no smudges. That wasn't her true home. That was just one door. There are more. She's awake now, and she remembers everything. We should have never gone into the woods again. But we did, 3 days after the cabin, after the mirror, after the chanting and the smoke and the note typed so neatly, it felt like Pam had slipped it under my door herself. Jack had stopped talking. Mom didn't sleep. Dad started checking all the locks 3 times a night, then 4, then 5. And still, we heard the footsteps in the yard. Still, we saw shapes beyond the windows, too tall, too thin, too still. But it was the whistling that finally broke us. It started at 3 a.m. every night. Just 3 notes. A lullaby almost. At first we thought it was in our heads, but when Dad opened the front door one night with a shotgun in his hands, I followed. There was no wind, no movement, but the sound was closer now, not from the trees, from beneath the house. That same night Jack told me about the spot in the woods. "You remember when we were kids?" he said quietly, voice hoarse from disuse. "Pam took me hiking once. She said there was a place where her mother used to bring her. Said it was sacred. That if you bled on the stones there, you'd never be forgotten." "Why are you telling me this now?" He met my eyes. "Because I think that's where she came back, and I think it's calling me." I wanted to say no. I wanted to scream, throw something, maybe beg him to never say her name again. Instead, I asked, "Where is it?" The next morning, we hiked out before dawn. The forest behind our house stretched out for miles. Dense, quiet, and long forgotten. Jack led the way, never pausing, even when the trees got thicker than seemed natural, even when the compass app on my phone spun in lazy circles. After an hour of walking, we found the stones. They sat in a circle, half buried in moss and thyme. Carved symbols coated their surface. Some I recognized from the cabin, others were new. Jack knelt and touched the center stone. It was warm. Then he did something I wasn't ready for. He took out a small pocket knife and cut his palm. "Are you insane?" I hissed. He didn't answer. He let the blood drip onto the center of the stone. The forest fell utterly silent. Then, a scream. It didn't come from nearby, it came from below us. The stone cracked. The ground shifted just slightly. And then I saw it, thin, worm-like roots writhing beneath the moss. They were growing toward the blood. Something in the earth moved. And then I heard her voice. "Jack, before we move on, please donate me in the form of subscribe." It came from the trees, software whispery, the same tone she used when she used to play with his hair, or when she cooed at the dog she stole and starved. Jack stood up. I saw it before he said anything. His eyes were dilated, his face slack. "She wants me to stay." "No," I said, "you don't get to be the fool again. You saw the mirror. You saw what she is." "She's in pain," he murmured. "She's lost." And then he turned and ran into the woods. I chased him. I don't know how long I ran for. Could have been minutes, could have been hours. Trees blurred past. The fog was so thick it clung to my skin like wet cloth. My name echoed behind me in her voice, again and again. "Come back. Don't leave. She's not safe without you." Eventually I stumbled into a clearing. Jack stood in the middle. Before him was Pam. But she wasn't Pam. She wore her skin, yes. The same face, the same jet-black hair, but it was wrong now. The skin didn't quite fit. It bulged in places, sagged in others. Her mouth was too wide, and her eyes were black pits with stars swirling in them. She held out her arms. Jack took a step forward. I screamed. She turned. That was when I saw her shadow. It didn't match her shape. It was larger, more limbed, like a spider with too many joints. It twitched and shifted on the ground as if impatient. "I missed you," she said. Her voice was both her old voice and something beneath it, like insects humming behind a wall. Jack froze. His lips trembled. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't know what you are." She smiled. "That's why I love you." She extended a hand. "Come, let me show you what I see." He almost did. Almost. Then something changed. I don't know if it was the shadow or the way the air warped behind her, or maybe it was the fact her feet didn't touch the ground. They hovered just slightly above it. But Jack turned to me. "She's not Pam." I nodded. "Number she hasn't been for a long time." And just like that, she screamed. The forest bent in on itself, the trees cracked, the sky darkened, her face twisted into a snarl, unhinging like a snake's jaw. From her mouth came a sound so loud it knocked me to the ground, like a chorus of screams all layered on top of each other. She lunged for Jack, but this time he was ready. He held up the same knife he'd tried to destroy the mirror with. It burned red-hot in his hands now, and when she touched it, she burst into flame, not fire like we know it. This was white-hot, spectral, with no smoke and no heat, just burning light. She writhed, screeched, her skin peeled away in sheets, the shadow twisted. Then she collapsed to the forest floor, dissolving into ash. The shadow lingered a moment longer, then vanished. The silence afterward was unreal. We walked back slowly. The forest no longer felt quiet, just peaceful. When we got home, Mom cried. Dad hugged Jack harder than I'd ever seen, but deep down, none of us felt it was over. That night, I found a new note tucked into my bedroom mirror frame. Typed, "You burned the husk, but I'm in the roots now. I'm in the soil. Every time you bleed, every time you remember me, I grow." It's strange the way the mind works after you go through something like that. It's like the horror never leaves you. Like a part of it is still living inside you, waiting for the right moment to emerge. The house felt normal again at first, quiet, safe, but that was the problem. The stillness was too perfect. And the note in the mirror. It gnawed at the back of my mind, especially when I tried to sleep. I could almost hear Pam's voice, a faint whisper just beyond the threshold of hearing, calling me back to the forest. But I didn't want to go back. Jack didn't talk about what happened. He barely spoke at all. Mum kept her distance. She was trying to be strong for us, but she couldn't hide the fear in her eyes. Dad was the same. He took to sleeping in the living room, the shotgun beside him, just in case someone, decided to pay us a visit again. Days passed. The sun came and went, leaving us with a coldness that seemed to sink into our bones. But it wasn't until I started having the dreams that I knew things weren't over. The first dream was simple. I was back in the forest. The trees were taller than before, the fog thicker. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. I just stood there, frozen, waiting. And then I saw her. Pam. But not Pam. Her body was twisted, like the bones inside her had been rearranged. Her arms stretched too long, her fingers ending in claws. Her skin was grey, mottled, rotting. Her eyes were just black holes. She didn't say anything, she just stood there, watching me. And then the ground beneath my feet started to shudder. The trees swayed and the earth cracked open. I fell into the hole. When I woke up, my heart was pounding, sweat soaking my sheets. I thought I was just imagining it. But that night I saw something else. I woke up to a loud crash. The noise came from the hallway outside my room. I jumped out of bed, my heart racing, but when I stepped into the hall, I froze. There was nothing there, just the dim light of the moon filtering through the window. But then I saw it. A small, fresh blood stain on the floor, just a single drop. It was like the world had stopped. The air felt heavy, too thick, like something was pressing down on me. I knelt down to touch the drop of blood, but before I could, the door at the end of the hall creaked open. Pam. I should have run, I should have screamed, but I couldn't. She was standing there in the doorway, her shape barely visible in the shadows, the same hollow eyes, the same twisted, broken smile. "I'm in the roots," she whispered. I heard her voice in my head, the same voice from the dream, but it was different now, thicker, like it was dripping with something wrong. She didn't move, just stood there in the doorway, waiting. I couldn't look away. Something about her presence rooted me in place, a cold, invisible force that held me there. But then something broke through the fog in my mind. A voice, my own, screaming at me to run, to leave. I tore my eyes away from her and sprinted to the stairs. I don't know how I managed to get downstairs. I don't know how I ended up in the kitchen, standing in front of the window, staring out at the night. But when I turned around, I saw it. There, in the corner of the kitchen, was a pile of old, decaying roots. They were twisted together in a heap, and they moved, shifting like something inside them was alive. I felt my stomach drop. I knew what it was. I didn't need to touch it to know. It was her. The same thing I saw in the woods, the same shadow that clung to her, the thing that had been pulling at the edges of my mind since we'd left the cabin. I reached for my phone, hands shaking, and tried to call Jack. But before I could hit the dial, the kitchen lights flickered. The roots moved again, and I heard her voice, so clear now, like she was right next to me. "You can't escape me," she whispered. "I'll always find you." And then the door to the backyard slammed open. A cold wind rushed through the house, swirling around me. The roots were coming for me. I could feel it. I turned and ran, up the stairs, into my room. I locked the door, but I knew it wouldn't help. The floor creaked behind me, slowly. Step by step, I backed away, my heart hammering in my chest, and then the door to my room began to open. The next morning, the house was still. Too still. Mom and Dad were gone, probably out trying to figure out what to do. Jack hadn't come back from wherever he went. I didn't know where he was, but I didn't feel safe going after him. Not after what had happened. I stayed in my room all day. I couldn't shake the feeling that Pam was still here, that she was watching me, waiting. By the time the sun set, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know what was going on. I grabbed my jacket, and before I even knew what I was doing, I was outside, heading toward the forest. I couldn't stop myself. There was something pulling me there, something that was calling me. The trees loomed above me as I made my way into the woods, the dark silhouette of the forest swallowing the last remnants of daylight. It felt like the air had thickened around me, pressing in, heavy with the weight of something wrong, something ancient. I could hear nothing but the sound of my breathing, quick and shallow, and the rustling of the leaves underfoot. I knew I shouldn't be here. The voice in my head told me to turn back, to go home, to find some way to forget this whole nightmare. But the pull was stronger than anything I'd ever felt before. I had to know. I had to understand. Was she really gone? Was this over, or was I just fooling myself into thinking I could escape? The night air seemed to grow colder with each step I took deeper into the woods, and my heart pounded harder in my chest. The path twisted ahead, leading me toward the heart of the forest. I didn't remember seeing it this way before, but then again, the forest had never felt so alive, so watchful. Every crack of a twig, every rustle of leaves made my pulse spike. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone, that something, someone, was with me, watching me, waiting for me. I glanced back over my shoulder, half expecting to see Pam standing there, her hollow eyes locked on me. But there was only the darkness. The trees seemed to close in around me, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers, threatening to pull me deeper into their embrace. I stumbled forward, the darkness swallowing my thoughts, and soon I found myself in the center of the forest, where it had all begun. The clearing was just as I remembered it, only it felt different. More alive, more oppressive. The ground beneath my feet was soft, almost too soft, like it was pulsing with something. And there, at the center of the clearing, was a large, twisted tree. Its roots sprawled out across the earth like the tendrils of a nightmare, stretching toward me. The bark was blackened and scorched, as though it had been burned, but it still pulsed with an eerie energy, like the heartbeat of something terrible. I froze. It was as if the air had stopped moving altogether. The forest had gone silent. Every creature, every whisper of wind seemed to vanish. And then, from the darkness of the trees surrounding me, I heard her voice. "I'm waiting for you." I turned in the direction of the sound, my blood running cold. There, standing in the shadows, was Pam, or what was left of her. Her face was more twisted than before, the same hollow eyes, the same distorted grin. Her body seemed almost too thin, as though the very flesh had been pulled taut over her bones. But it wasn't just her presence that sent a chill through my veins. It was the roots. They were moving, slowly, almost imperceptibly, crawling toward her. It was like they were connected to her, feeding off her, obeying her every whim. I felt sick to my stomach. I tried to turn and run, but my feet wouldn't move. I was rooted to the spot. "You can't run from me anymore," she said, her voice thick with malice. She stepped forward, her feet sliding through the underbrush without making a sound. I tried to scream, but my throat was dry. My voice wouldn't come out. She took another step closer, the twisted roots curling behind her like a serpent, wrapping around her legs. She looked like a puppet, its strings pulled by some unseen force. "I've been waiting for you. Don't you see?" she whispered, her words dripping with venom. "We are tied together, always have been. You can't escape me. I am the roots, the heart of this forest. And now, you belong to me." The ground beneath my feet shifted. The roots in the dirt moved, surging toward me with a horrifying speed, and before I could react, I felt the cold tendrils wrap around my ankles, pulling me toward the twisted tree. "No!" I screamed, struggling against the roots, but they were too strong. The more I fought, the tighter they gripped. I looked up at Pam. No, the twisted version of Pam that stood before me, her eyes gleaming with an inhuman hunger. "You always knew there was something wrong with me," she hissed. "That's why you stayed away. That's why you kept running. But you're mine now. You've always been mine." I gasped, trying to break free, but the roots were suffocating me, drawing me closer to the earth, to that twisted, blackened tree. It felt like the ground itself was trying to pull me into its depths. "Please, no." She smiled, a sickening, twisted grin, and reached out a hand toward me. But it wasn't Pam's hand. It was something far worse. The fingers were elongated, black, and covered in filth. I had no choice. I knew what I had to do. I clenched my teeth and shut my eyes. There was only one way out of this. I couldn't let it win. I couldn't let it take me. With every ounce of strength I could muster, I yanked my body away from the roots, pulling free from their hold just enough to scramble to my feet. I couldn't stop shaking, couldn't stop the dizziness that threatened to overtake me. But I had to keep going. With one last desperate scream, I charged toward the edge of the clearing, ignoring the twisting roots that tried to grab at me. "You can't leave," Pam's voice screamed in the distance, but I didn't look back. I ran, pushing myself through the darkened forest, my breath ragged and my heart pounding in my chest. The trees felt like they were closing in on me. I didn't stop. The moment I crossed out of the woods, the air cleared. The weight lifted. But Pam's voice lingered in my mind, like a whisper I couldn't shake. "I'll always be waiting." And as I ran back to the house, I knew this nightmare was far from over. But one thing was certain. I wasn't alone. I stumbled through the underbrush, my legs weak, the forest air thick with the scent of damp earth and decay. My mind raced, heart pounding erratically in my chest as the image of Pam's twisted face, those hollow eyes, and the sickening grin haunted me with every step I took. She wasn't gone. Not really. I had escaped, physically maybe. But in some dark corner of my mind, I could feel her watching, waiting. The forest had seemed to shift around me, its once familiar terrain now unfamiliar, like a nightmare I couldn't shake. With every turn, I felt the presence of something, someone, lurking just behind me. The wind rustled through the trees, but it didn't sound natural. It felt intentional. It felt like it was calling to me. I had to get home. I had to get out of the forest. My pulse spiked as the clearing grew more distant, the darkness closing in around me. The shadows stretched long across the path, twisting in unnatural angles, like they were alive, waiting to trap me once more. I pushed through the brush, each step more difficult than the last, the weight of the forest pressing down on my shoulders. The very earth seemed to resist me, as if the land itself was conspiring with Pam. No, with whatever dark force she had become, to keep me trapped here. Get out now. The thought pushed me forward. My breath was coming faster, more shallow, each inhale colder than the last. I forced my legs to move faster, stumbling over uneven ground, my feet slipping in the thick mud. The trees closed in tighter, their branches scraping the sky above, casting strange shadows across the path. And then I saw it, the clearing again. But it wasn't like the first time. This time it was different. The center of the clearing where the twisted tree had stood, where the roots had pulled, was empty. The air was thick with something unholy, the ground beneath my feet soft, like it was pulsating with a heartbeat that wasn't my own. There, where Pam had stood, a strange mist had risen from the earth, swirling around the clearing like a phantom's breath. And in the center of the mist, the tree was gone. Instead, a pit had opened in the ground, deep and dark, as though the very earth had been split apart. It wasn't just any hole, it felt like a gateway, something ancient and ominous, an open wound in the world. And I knew, without a doubt, that this was it. This was the heart of everything. The roots, they weren't just part of the tree, they were part of her, part of what Pam had become, a living thing, a manifestation of whatever dark force had taken root inside her. The pit seemed to hum with power, vibrating in the stillness. From the depths of that darkness, I could hear faint whispers, voices, low and distorted, like they were coming from far below. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I just stood there, watching as the shadows deepened around me, knowing that this was my final test. I had no choice. The whispers grew louder. Words, indistinct but somehow familiar, curled through my mind like a poison. A warning. A call. I forced myself to take a step forward, and then another. It was the moment of truth. If I went forward, I might never come back. If I stopped now, it would only give Pam, whatever she had become, more power, more control. I couldn't let her win. My foot touched the edge of the pit. The ground quivered beneath me, and I heard a low, mocking laugh, as if the earth itself was amused by my feeble attempts to resist. Then, from the swirling mist, I saw her again. Pam, but it wasn't really her. Not anymore. She was something else, something darker, something ancient that had merged with the forest, the tree, the roots. She was part of the earth now, an extension of it, and she looked at me with those hollow, empty eyes, her mouth stretching into a grin that made my stomach churn. The air around her rippled, as if she were part of the very fabric of the world. "You should never have come back," she said, her voice an unnatural blend of sweetness and malice. It was a voice that didn't belong to her. It was the forest itself, the land. The ancient evil that had infected her, infecting me too. "You think you can escape? You think you can leave me behind?" Her form flickered, and I realized she wasn't fully corporeal anymore. She was a shadow, a wraith, a manifestation of the terror she had become. "I've been waiting for you, just as the roots have been waiting," she continued, her voice reverberating with an unsettling echo. "This place is mine. We are bound together. You can't escape it. You can't escape me." The ground beneath my feet shifted, and I felt myself falling. The pit, no, the portal, opened wider. I didn't want to look down, but I couldn't help it. My vision blurred with the force of the pull, and when I looked, I saw darkness. Nothing. Just endless blackness stretching below me, as though the world itself had no end. I screamed, but the air was thick in my lungs, and the sound didn't escape. Pam, or what had been Pam, was closing in on me. Her shadowy form twisted in the air, and the pit pulsed with her presence. She was reaching out, extending something toward me, a tendril that snaked from the depths. And then it happened. Without thinking, without any clear decision, I leapt forward. The earth trembled beneath me, and for a moment I felt the world lurch as if it was shifting, as if it were about to crack open beneath my feet. But then something inside me broke free. A surge of power, like a shock of lightning, flowed through me, through the very ground. I pushed through the darkness, pushing back against it. The force was unbearable, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. And then, nothing. The air was quiet, the earth was still. For the first time in years, I felt empty. The shadows around me had dissipated, the pull of the forest, the voices, the whispers, they were all gone. But as I looked around the empty clearing, I knew one thing for certain. Pam was gone, but the forest was still there. And I had just escaped one nightmare, only to know that I might never escape the next. With the final confrontation behind me, I turned and walked away. The eerie silence of the woods surrounding me. The world was still waiting for me, but I had learned one thing. Nothing is ever truly gone. Before we move on, please donate me in the form of subscribe.